Level 989.
Welcome to a 989 on Health Extra. These quick supplements should help ease any withdrawal symptoms you may experience while waiting for our next full episode. So, Mike, what's on today's agenda?
When we think about aches and pains, we tend to think about sore muscles, but not so much about sore tendons. This can be a problem, since healing a damaged tendon requires a different approach than a damaged muscle. A number of people I know are suffering with sore tendons right now, myself included, and I figured if I was going to research tendons, I might as well turn it into an episode. Before we get into things too deeply, let's clarify our terms. A muscle is soft tissue made of a mixture of proteins that produce a contraction, which changes the length and shape of the muscle cells. A ligament is fibrous connective tissue that connects bones to other bones. Then there's something called fascia, also connective tissue, and this is one you don't hear too much about, fascia. That's spelled F-A-S-C-I-A, which connects muscles to muscles, and tendons connect muscle to bone. Now, if you're not a connective tissue doctor, which is a real thing that I totally did not make up, the closest term would probably be rheumatologist, since they deal with musculoskeletal and joint disorders. If you're just an average Joe like myself, you probably think that muscles and tendons are all made of the same stuff. I mean, muscles are protein. That's what steaks are made of, right? And you need a sharp knife, some careful focus, and a good bit of force to cut a steak. If your hand ever slipped while cutting a steak, you could easily cut a piece of meat off your own body. Hopefully that sort of slip is rare for you. Tendons are mostly made of collagen. One form of collagen most of us are familiar with is gelatin, such as in Jell-O. A couple of medical applications for collagen that'll probably ring a bell are in lip augmentation and also collagen injections for painful joints. Now, I don't want to mislead you too much. Collagen is also a type of protein, but it's a much more flexible type. To put this in perspective, only 6% of a strong muscle will be made of collagen. Tendons are made of tiny fibers that are closely packed in a parallel structure and aligned in a wavelike or crimped pattern. When you really start reading the details of how all of this works, it gets very complicated very quickly. I'm going to quote from the encyclopedia here. Traditionally, tendons have been considered to be a mechanism by which muscles connect to bone, functioning to transmit forces. This connection allows tendons to passively modulate forces during locomotion, providing additional stability with no active work. However, over the past 2 decades, much research focused on the elastic properties of some tendons and their ability to function as springs. Not all tendons are required to perform the same functional role, with some tendons predominantly positioning limbs, such as the fingers when writing. These are positional tendons, and others acting as springs to make locomotion more efficient, energy-storing tendons. Energy-storing tendons can store and recover energy at high efficiency. For example, during a human stride, the Achilles tendon stretches as the ankle joint dorsiflexes. During the last portion of the stride, as the foot plantar flexes, pointing the toes down, the stored elastic energy is released. Furthermore, because the tendon stretches, the muscle is able to function with less or even no change in length, allowing the muscle to generate greater force. End quote. That's pretty cool. So, I think we've established that tendons are not muscles. You can build muscles by carefully stressing them repeatedly over time. You can bulk up your muscles. You don't bulk up your tendons. If you do the same activities often, your tendons will remodel based on those activities, and they might even increase in mass slightly as a result, but you don't get enormous bulging tendons from working out. Okay, so tendons are not muscles. Got it. Shut up already. It's time for another new term, tendinitis. Anytime you hear the suffix itis at the end of a medical term, itis means inflammation. You might associate inflammation with redness and irritation, but inflammation is a very complicated response from your body. Tendinitis is an inflamed tendon. Inflammation is your body's way of really combining its efforts on a problem. It's working to focus the immune system on the impacted area, increase blood flow, clear out any dead cells, and start tissue repair. Inflammation can last a few hours, or it can last years. Chronic inflammation can even lead to cancer. So if you're like me and you use the computer for 8 hours a day at work, followed by 6 hours a day at home, you can end up with tennis elbow. more technically called lateral epicondylitis. To check yourself for tennis elbow, let your, in my case, right arm hang down at your side. Then rotate your arm clockwise, so your thumb is pointing to the right. If you feel my pain, you probably have tennis elbow. I don't even play tennis. They should probably rename this computer elbow. And the strange thing is, it's not your elbow that hurts. There's also something called trigger finger or trigger thumb, which makes it hard to extend or flex the finger or thumb, and your digit might even lock up suddenly. Actually, trigger finger and thumb aren't from inflamed tendons. There are in fact something called sheaths around tendons, a lining or a covering, and these sheaths can be inflamed themselves, and that's what causes the trigger problems. Inflamed tendon linings are called tenosynovitis, and the most common form of tenosynovitis is called decurvain, Dequervain, which causes swelling of the tendon sheath of the thumb. Okay, so now we're all experts on tendons. Whew. So what do you do if your tendons are bothering you? Well, most likely you're doing something particular to annoy them. The best thing you can do is stop doing that thing. It's easier said than done. You know, I work at a factory and I see it every day. Some people's job is to stand at the conveyor belt and do the same thing 1,000 times over 8 hours, or 12 hours. I guess you can say the same of me. I mean, I wonder how many times a day I click a mouse. And that's where tendon pain is weird. It's not like clicking a mouse is difficult. It's a very tiny amount of pressure, a very tiny amount of effort. But it's the same motion over and over. I'm holding my hand the same way. I'm holding my wrist and arm the same way, making the same movement again and again. What do you do? So if you can't stop doing that one thing, what can you do? Well, you can ice the painful area. You can wear a splint or a brace that limits your movement and allows the damage to heal. You can take Tylenol or Advil to reduce pain and reduce inflammation. I personally don't like the painkiller approach, since you can just keep on performing whatever that damaging action is while you're taking the painkiller, and you're just making the problem worse. You can get steroid injections, and you can have surgery. Now, one personal thing I've noticed about tendon pain that's different from muscle pain is how slowly tendon damage heals. With a muscle, if you give it a couple of days rest, you're usually good to go. You can tell there's a marked improvement when it comes to a muscle. But if I take 2 days off the computer, within moments of getting back on the mouse and keyboard, the pain comes right back, and it feels just as bad as it did before the break. That's the problem with tendon damage. Okay, I'm going to paraphrase this next section of the encyclopedia because I need to cut out some of the really technical bits. The 3 main stages of tendon healing are inflammation, repair, and remodeling, and these stages can overlap with each other. In the first stage, inflammatory cells are recruited to the injury site, and the removal of damaged cells at the injury site occurs. After a few days, the repair stage begins when large amounts of collagen build up at the site of the injury. After about 6 weeks, the remodeling stage begins. The final maturation stage occurs after 10 weeks. And during this time, there's an increase in cross-linking of the collagen fibrils, which causes the tissue to stiffen. Gradually, over about 1 year, the tissue will turn from fibrous to scar-like. Let me repeat that last bit. Gradually over about 1 year. And that period assumes you're not damaging and redamaging your tendon again and again with the same activities. So unless you completely change jobs, you better get a really good brace and you better wear it almost constantly and do whatever you can to break up the activity that's doing you harm. Let's use computering as an example. Some computer mouses are designed as right-handed mouses, so avoid that. You need to get yourself a wireless mouse that's designed to be used with the right or left hand. And that way you can switch it up throughout the day. Use your right hand for an hour, use your left hand for an hour. Now in the beginning, it's going to be a hard adjustment. If you've been mousing with your right hand for 20 years, you're going to feel really slow and awkward with your left, but you'll probably be surprised how quickly you adjust if you just give it a few days. You can also get a variety of control devices. You can get a trackpad, a trackball, or a setup using a pen tablet and stylus rather than a mouse. Use a touchscreen monitor. You can vary your input methods and which hands you use. You can take breaks, you can do stretching exercises. There's a lot you can do. It might take extra time and effort and focus, especially in the beginning, but it can be done. Now, there is some evidence that stretching your tendons may slow down the healing process, so definitely go see a specialist about your particular problem, and they can recommend the best brace, the best therapy, and the best approach to your getting better. Something like a tendon in your wrist seems so minor, but it won't just impact you at work. Suddenly, you can't cut up your dinner like you used to. Combing your hair becomes a painful experience. Unbuttoning your fly during a potty emergency? Ow, ow, ow! Pickle jars? Forget it. Patty cake with the Ninos? Not for you. As always, there are lots of useful links in the show notes. Be sure to check these out for more details. Thanks again to our great listeners for sending in suggestions. If you'd like to send in your own topic for consideration, head on over to level989.com/contact and make it so.
That's all for now. You can find links to read more about today's topics at level989.com. Why not take a moment to rate or review us in iTunes, or give us a mention on social media? We can't help everyone if they don't know we exist. Don't rely on us as an alternative to medical advice from a professional healthcare provider. For the full disclaimer, please see our website. Thanks for listening, and now, go health yourself.